Welcome back. Now that Nikki Haley has dropped out of the race for the White House and Donald Trump is the presumptive nominee of the Republican Party. In a post on X, Liz Cheney says, quote, "We have 8 months to save our republic and ensure Donald Trump is never anywhere near the Oval Office again."
Maryland Congressman Jamie Raskin is the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee and was a member of the January 6th committee, of course, and joins us now. Congressman Raskin, thanks very much for being with us. So flashback to the days just after January 6th, to the attack. Did you think then that Donald Trump would be the presumptive presidential nominee? And do you agree with Liz Cheney's assessment, given the antipathy to both of these candidates by, large numbers of voters in their parties? Do you think that she can live up to her pledge to try to keep him from the Oval Office?
Well, of course, the next election wasn't much on my mind when we were reeling from the violence and the catastrophe of January 6th. But I think my assumption was that of the Constitution itself, which is that someone who participates in an insurrection against the Union should never be allowed to hold office again. And it is disgraceful that a great political party, much less Abraham Lincoln's party, a party of liberty and union, should be reduced to a cult of authoritarian personality in league with autocrats and kleptocrats and dictators all over the world. So I applaud Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, the Lincoln Project, all of the Republicans who are standing up for the Constitution. But what we've seen in this election, and we'll have to follow what happens with Nikki Haley, is the Republicans break, but they can't bend. In other words, there's no ability to accommodate other views because everybody has to follow Donald Trump like a monarch. The Democrats, as somebody was just saying, we know how to bend. Barack Obama brought Hillary Clinton in. It was the team of rivals, and rather than try to ostracize her, expel her, vilify her, and condemn her, she was brought in and her magnificent talents were used in the Obama administration. So there's a very big difference between our two parties at this point, and the difference between our parties really parallels the struggle that President Biden set forth at Valley Forge between the liberal democracy standing up for freedom versus the autocrats and the plutocrats and the monarchs.
And as we head now into the general election, essentially, Trump is facing these 91 criminal charges, 4 different cases. Do you think we will see the federal election interference case go to trial this year before the election? And just how crucial is that?
Well, I actually don't think it's that crucial because, look, everybody knows exactly who Donald Trump is. Everybody knows who Joe Biden is. I mean, Joe Biden has dedicated his life to the proposition that government must be an instrument of the common good for children, for young people, for older people, for the well-being of all of society. Donald Trump is someone who's in politics. When he first got in, he said it was going to be the greatest infomercial of all time. He got into it for personal private profit, for self-enrichment, and that's the way he acted in office. So each of these cases, whether it's the financial fraud in New York or the sexual assault in New York or the defamation in New York, or it's the attempt to overthrow the 2020 election, which, of course, the House of Representatives has already pronounced upon. He was already impeached for doing that. Each of these just gives us a further glimpse into who Donald Trump is. But I think America knows who Donald Trump is. The question is, who are we? And are we going to stand with democracy and freedom, or will we lapse into some other kind of theocratic or autocratic kind of government? That's really the question for the American people.
It's such an important and profound question, Congressman. And I'm just thinking, when you see that most of the polls show that it's going to be a very tight race coming in November, how do you think, how do you see that we've gotten to this point as a country, Congressman?
Well, it's always been a struggle against autocratic forms of government and monarchical forms of government and slavery and white supremacy. That's nothing new. This is a struggle that's been going on from the beginning of our history. But I'll tell you this, the vast majority of the American people are on the side of democracy. Joe Biden beat him by more than 7 million votes, 306 to 232 in the Electoral College. Even Hillary Clinton, although she lost in the Electoral College, beat him by 2.5 million votes. So when you look at where the popular majority is, people are on our side in terms of gun safety, in terms of universal violent criminal background check. The public's on our side in terms of defending women's right to choose. But you got more than 150 Republicans, including the Speaker of the House, who've taken a position that life begins at conception. And not only should abortion be criminal, but IVF should be made illegal and should also be a criminal act. So that's what the election is going to be about. You know, they want to make it about Joe Biden's 82 years. Some people think it should be about Donald Trump's 91 felony criminal counts in federal and state court. But really, more fundamentally, it's about democracy and freedom versus dictatorship and authoritarianism.
And as you were speaking, we learned that Senator Joni Ernst just endorsed Trump. She's the last member now of the Senate minority leadership team to endorse Donald Trump after Mitch McConnell came out with his endorsement this morning. And I just think about you and the January 6th committee spending the hundreds of hours, all the money, the staff, the countless resources to show the American people what happened on January 6th and Donald Trump's role in it. What do you think about him potentially returning to the Oval Office?
Well, it wasn't just the massive violence unleashed against our police officers on that day and the violence that pervaded the halls that we're standing in right now. It was also in the months before when Donald Trump tried to go to state election officials like Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State in Georgia, and say, just find me 11,780 votes, or when he tried to organize a coup within the Department of Justice to get the Department of Justice just to say that it was a corrupt election and then leave the rest to me and my friends in the House. He said, look, 60 federal and state courts rejected his big lie, the propaganda that there had been election fraud or election corruption, and yet he continues to campaign almost exclusively on his big lie and the idea that he was somehow cheated out of an election. He wasn't. He lost the election in 2020. He's going to lose the election in 2024 because the vast majority of the people reject what it is he's selling.